Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to Waking the Womb, Ayurvedic and energetic perspectives on easing restrictions and living more fully. This is such a vital topic for women to understand to live our life with more ease and less symptoms and concerns. My intentions with these videos is to simply provide information. This is not medical advice. This is not me telling you what you should or shouldn't do. These are just ideas and topics of Ayurveda that I have personally found to be very supportive in my own health journey. In Ayurveda, there is no one-size-fits-all approach, but there is general information that can be helpful for all people. I always encourage people to tap into their intuition, trust their intuition, and if you need a little more support, of course, talk to your primary care provider or an Ayurveda health counselor like me for more individualized support. If you are brand new to Ayurveda or want a bit of a refresher before jumping into this video, check out my other videos on YouTube where I talk about the basics of Ayurveda, which are the 5 Ayurvedic elements and the 3 doshas. You don't need to understand all of those topics to benefit from this video. So if you feel like just jumping in and starting this video with me, feel free to do that. If you like this type of content and want to be supported on your wellness journey from a holistic standpoint, I would strongly encourage you to follow along here on YouTube with me or check out my social media on Instagram or Facebook. You can also find all of my offerings and a bunch more information on my website, dustyroselifestyle.com. And if you're in the Golden, British Columbia area, I do offer services in person in Golden as well. In this video today, we will start by discussing cyclical living with Ayurveda. This is important for every single human being to know, regardless of gender or regardless of where we are in our life cycle. Next, I will talk about the specifics of the Ayurvedic seasons of womanhood. Lastly, I will bring up a few of the common concerns that I see when I work one-on-one with clients, some of the experiences that I've had as a woman, and some Ayurvedic ideas to support these common concerns. This is a brief video on these topics. It truly is the tip of the iceberg. So if you hear things in this video session that interest you, I would highly suggest checking out some of my mini courses where I go much more in depth on these topics. Let's get started today with an Ayurvedic approach to cyclical living. Something that I am very passionate about on a personal and professional level when I work with clients is to tap into the cyclical nature of the world around us. We are not separate from nature. We are a part of nature. It can be very easy to get disconnected from the natural world when we have these modern conveniences, which are amazing. I love that I have 4 walls around me with heat and electricity and computer Wi-Fi. But the more we progress as human beings in this modern technological way, the more we see ourselves getting disconnected from the natural rhythms of the world. We also live in a very polarized world in 2025. If you are not this, you must be that. There is so much room between these extreme opinions that we are seeing in politics, religion, sexuality, gender, everything. Nature doesn't differentiate this way. A tree is unbothered that there is a shrub next to it. A bird could care less if there is a whale in the ocean. What I choose to do with my energy is to try to focus on what unites us. The cycles of the world unite us all. We are all familiar with the solar cycle of the sun. It rises every morning and it sets every evening. There might be differences in how long it is up in the sky and the angle at which it shines on us, but every single day the sun rises and the sun sets on this 24-hour clock. We are all affected by the sun. The moon also has a cycle that it flows through, a 28-day cycle. Sometimes the moon is full, sometimes the moon is new, and sometimes it's at a varying degree of fullness or newness. The moon also affects us as human beings. We have a monthly cycle. We also have a yearly cycle, and in Ayurveda, we break the year up into 3 distinct phases. Depending on where you live, you might only have one kind of season or maybe 2 seasons. Here in the Canadian Rockies, we have 3 pretty distinct seasons. And when we tie this to Ayurveda, we can start to harness the power of the seasons and the energy that affects us during these seasons. So, regardless of gender, sexuality, race, political organization, or country of origin, the sun, the moon, and the year is all cycles that every single human being is affected by. And when we learn to flow with these seasons, we can have a lot of ease in our wellness patterns. It's when we get disconnected from nature that we start to see more and more manifestations of dis-ease in our physical, mental, and spiritual bodies. Solar energy is tied to the divine masculine. There is a routine and stability with the sun. Because it's a short cycle, relatively speaking, of 24 hours, there is a routine and steadiness in that rhythm. Lunar energy is tied to the divine feminine. It is a 28-day cycle, and energy levels when the moon is full can be much different than the energy levels when the moon is new. Each day is a little bit different. Masculine and feminine are much more than just gender topics. We are all affected by the sun, and we are all affected by the moon. And we have these 2 cycles going on in our life, regardless of gender. So when we can tap into our own personal divine masculine and feminine, we can find balance in these cycles, and we can harness the power of the moon and the power of the sun to support our health. The yearly cycles, as I mentioned, are tied to the 3 doshas of Ayurveda: Kapha, Pitta, and Vata. All living things have the 3 doshas within them. So these are cycles that affect all people and unite us. The yearly cycles of our life are the longest cycle when we think about living cyclically. There are Ayurvedic correlations to each of the seasons. Each season of our natural world has specific qualities, much like the 3 doshas have specific qualities. Each can be responsible for different wellness concerns. So in the spring, when I'm recording this video, it is the Kapha season of nature. Kapha is heavy. It is the earth and water elements, and concerns that we see in the spring can be those sinusy, mucousy, phlegmy type things. The summer season of the natural world is related to the Pitta dosha. The Pitta dosha is ruled by fire. We all know that in the middle of the heated summer, sometimes we can have intensity and irritations, and we can see things happening in our physical body like heartburn or more urgent bowel movements or those skin irritations that pop up. Sunburn is the perfect physical manifestation of the fire element. The winter season of nature is correlated to the Vata dosha. The Vata dosha is air and ether, and there is no gravity with either of those elements. There is also no moisture in the air and ether elements. So concerns that we might see in the winter are more related to dryness, dry skin, dry mucous membranes, those painful sore throats where feels like razor blades. There's no moisture there. So as we learn to cycle with the seasons of nature and understand the doshic correlations, we can start to support our health naturally. A common concern that I see when I work one-on-one with people is that they have lost touch with the cyclical nature of life. Another way to look at life is that we are born, we work and we do, and then we die. That to me doesn't sound like all that much fun. It's very linear. What I see people focusing on sometimes is the next thing in front of them, the next raise, the next vacation, the nicer car, the bigger house, the promotion. It becomes very linear. And what happens when we live in a linear way is that we get more and more stretched out and burnt out. When we tap into the cycles of nature, a very cool spiral of momentum begins to occur. When we live cyclically versus in a linear fashion, we start to understand the energies that we can tap into with these cycles. So the 24-hour cycle of the solar cycle is powerful. We can use this energy on a 24-hour cycle and kind of get things done. That is the solar energy. It's the get it done energy of the world. But then it's important for us to rest. The sun does not shine 24 hours a day for a reason. It would burn out the planet. So we need to remember this cycle as well. Then we can tap into that lunar cycle, which is 28 days long, and we can begin to realize we don't need to have the same exact energy every single day. The moon, if it was full every single day, the tides in the oceans and the manifestations of water-based illnesses in our life would be extreme. The world would be a very dangerous place if the moon was full at all times. The moon knows that it only needs to be full for a short period of time each month, and then it can cycle and let go and release and rebuild. The same goes with the yearly cycle. When we tap into that 365-day cycle, we know that we can do things differently in the winter, the summer, and the spring that are going to support our health. When we start to cycle evenly with these 3 cycles of nature, very powerful things can happen in our health and wellness. We become this spiral of momentum. Each day is a fresh start. Every moon cycle is a new beginning. Every yearly cycle can help us grow, evolve, and let go. I would love for you to contemplate for a moment and think about what your favorite season in nature is. In an Ayurvedic perspective, we break them down into spring, summer, or winter. Which is your favorite season, and why is that your favorite season? I have a sneaking suspicion that summer will take the lead. Next, I want to start talking more specifically about the Ayurvedic seasons of womanhood. Much like the seasons of nature correlate to the 3 doshas, in Ayurveda, we believe in 3 specific life phases as well, and these also relate to the 3 doshas. So each season of our life has specific qualities and can be responsible for different wellness concerns. The spring season of our life is related to the Kapha dosha, much like the spring season of nature is related to the Kapha dosha. This is the period of our life from conception or birth until we reach that point of puberty in our lives. Everything is fresh and new and exciting when we are babies. The concerns that babies quite often have are related to that Kapha dosha. There is a lot of mucousy phlegm concerns that can also happen in the spring season of nature at any age because there is that doshic correlation. From puberty until the point of menopause and menopause, we are in the summer season of our life, and this relates to the Pitta dosha, just like the summer season of nature relates to the Pitta dosha. This is where fire is the highest. We all know what happens to a teenager when they hit puberty. They get a little more intense and fiery and passionate about things. And this happens as those hormones rise. Regardless of which hormones we're talking about, this happens to every person in their life cycle. This is where we are the busiest. The summer season of nature is quite often the busiest time of our year. A lot of people have summer as their favorite season, and a lot of our focus as humans is placed on this summer Pitta season of our life. We are busy, we are doing things, we are growing up and doing all of the things of life, whether that is having a family and raising a family, or going to university and having a career, or maybe you're doing all of those things. These are the busyness. This is the passionate time of our life, the intense time of our life. As our hormones, regardless of the hormones that they are, start to decrease, this is where we shift into the winter season of our life, which is connected to the Vata dosha. This is from menopause and menopause up until we take our last breath on this planet in this earthly form. Now, this phase of our life tends to get a bad reputation. Perimenopause and menopause can be very challenging for people to transition into. There is a dryness quality to winter, and this is what we can see in some of our health and wellness concerns as we transition into those later years of life. There isn't a lot of research on hormone health in general. So, transitioning through the phases between spring of our life, Kapha, and summer of our life, Pitta, can be challenging. Those seasonal differences in nature and our bodies can bring a lot of concerns. The same thing happens when we transition from the summer season of nature and life into the winter season of nature and life. There are huge shifts happening, but they're quite often misunderstood inside of our body. An energetic way that we can look at our cycle of life in a less linear way is by looking at some of the laws of physics. And I am most definitely not claiming to be a physics expert, but Albert Einstein was. And he says that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. So instead of thinking of our lifespan as this linear thing, we can start to think about our life cycle as a cycle. If you have ever dealt with fertility concerns, you know that there is a time of your life where you want to conceive a child, but sometimes it just doesn't happen on our timeline. There are theories and ideas behind the energetics of this concern, and sometimes what people say is that that child isn't ready to be here yet in this earthly plane. Or maybe you are not quite ready to be a parent yet. That soul of that child might still be dealing with some karmic lesson, or maybe it wants to be born in a different season. There are people on Instagram and other places online that are much more well versed than I am in this theory and in this concept, but I truly do believe that our souls are put earthside on this planet at a specific time to the specific parents and for a specific reason. We cycle before we are born. The ovulation and fertilization cycle can sometimes take a while. And this is a cycle we can tap into if conception and pregnancy is a goal of yours. When we are born into the Kapha or spring of our life. And the shift between childhood and puberty is not just something that happens overnight. We quite often, in a linear fashion, think about dates. The date we were conceived, the date we were born, the date of our first menstrual cycle. There are cycles that are happening before puberty fully hits and sets in. Those 24-hour cycles, those lunar cycles, and those yearly cycles are occurring. When we hit puberty, we might have that first date of our first menstrual cycle as a moment in time that we remember as puberty. That same thing is absolutely true for the perimenopause years of our life as well. We don't just end our menstrual cycle on a day. There are things that are happening in those years of our life that we can tap into in a cyclical way to support that transition. The same thing happens for a lot of people at the end of our life cycle as well. Of course, very sudden accidents and injuries can happen, and that is more of a specific point in our timeline. But for a lot of human beings, death is also a process. I worked for many years as a registered nurse, and one of the coolest stories that I have ever experienced was a night that I was working in a rural hospital. I was the only staff member in the hospital that night, and I had on one wing of the hospital an elder of the community who was very well respected, who was palliative. She passed away on my shift, and the family was all around her. It was a beautiful experience. She drew her last breath. The family called me in, and it was the most peaceful experience I think that I've ever had with supporting the death process. When that was happening, a call bell went off down at the other end of the hospital, and a young couple was giving birth to their first child. It was the most intensely energetic experience that I have ever had. As that woman delivered that child and I helped support that child for the first time and looked into that baby's eyes, the energy of the elder woman who had just passed away, without any doubt in my mind, was in that child. That couple had been trying to conceive for multiple years. Without a doubt, in my mind, that baby was waiting to be born at that exact moment. So when we relate this to an Ayurvedic and energetic perspective, I think that this is what Albert Einstein was getting at when he said that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes form from one form to another. This is why it's so important from an energetic perspective to try our best to heal generational wounds, to clear karmic baggage, to create the best energy that we possibly can during our life cycles before we take our last breath on this earth. I don't have children in this lifetime. So even though I'm not passing on a direct energetic presence to my children, I truly believe that by healing some of my stuff in this lifetime, I am going to be leaving the world with a positive energy. So here is another question for you. What would happen in our natural world if the sun stayed up 24 hours a day? What would happen in our natural world if the sun never came up again? What do you suppose would happen to a human being who's lived their entire life somewhere in the tropics where it's warm and humid and hot all year long, and they were picked up and planted in the Arctic without any preparation, without any materials to survive? These similar things happen to us when we aren't tapping into the cyclical nature of our lives. When we go, that is like the sun being up 24 hours a day. When our lunar or 28-day cycle is affected by things like hormonal birth control, or even just shifts in our hormones without the addition of birth control, we are affecting our lunar cycle as women. If we are forced for some reason, like surgical interventions of hysterectomies or having ovaries removed, when we are meant to be in the menstruating years of our life, which is the Pitta season of life, and we are taken out of that suddenly, it forces us into a winter season. This makes us lose contact with that cycle. What would happen to a person if they were taken from summer and dropped into winter without any advice or support is that that person's obviously going to struggle. The rise of hysterectomies are at an all-time high in our society right now. Ayurveda believes that the organ is not the problem. It is something to do with our lifestyle that is out of sync. The seasons and cycles of womanhood are both beautifully complex and beautifully simple all at the same time. Unfortunately, Western healthcare doesn't really understand these cycles. Hormonal prescription options and surgical interventions are quite often used to address feminine health concerns when the root cause of these concerns can't be identified. There is very little research and study done to support women's health concerns. From an Ayurvedic perspective, we don't look at an organ as being flawed. We look at something in our cycles, something in our day-to-day experience being imbalanced that leads to these concerns. Understanding and tapping into your lunar and yearly cycles in particular are going to be very beneficial when you want to support your hormones and reproductive organs in a natural and holistic way. The lunar cycles of the moon and the lunar cycles of our womb space is 100% magic. We are quite often taught or trained, or it's ingrained in us, to ignore our monthly bleed and ovulation cycles, to medicate them, to dread them. But when we tap into the lunar cycle, we start to realize just how wonderful and awesome we are. It is not a coincidence that the lunar cycle is 28 days long and a menstrual cycle is also 28 days long. The new moon has a much different energy than the full moon does. The full moon doesn't try to be a new moon, and the new moon doesn't try to be a full moon. When we start to apply the ideas of the energies of the lunar cycle to our menstrual cycle, a huge shift occurs in the body. Tapping into the lunar cycle fairly late in my life, to be totally honest, was a total game changer in my personal menstrual health journey. I had an IUD for about 8 or 9 years and didn't have a menstrual cycle during that entire time. And I truly believe that there is a time and a place for everything. And that was part of my journey that I don't regret. However, I could feel my body craving. It was craving a menstrual cycle. If you had told me I would be feeling that way when I was in my early 20s, when I struggled with horrendous cramps and horrible symptoms, I would have thought you were totally banana pancake. So now to have a completely different perspective on my monthly cycle and actually look forward to my bleed cycle, this truly shows the power that we can tap into. We don't have to believe all those polarized things that we've been taught about our menstrual cycle. We are magic. We are in tune with the moon, and we can flow through our monthly cycles just like the moon flows through its monthly cycle. Perhaps you have noticed that women and young girls tend to grow up quite a bit faster, have more maturity and insights, and we also tend to live longer than men. One of the energetic reasons behind this is that with each lunar or monthly cycle, we are also processing an entire year's worth of energy in an Ayurvedic way. Generational eggs is a really interesting topic that I want all women to know about, and I find not every woman knows this. When you were a fetus in your mother's womb space, you already had all of the eggs that you would have for your lifetime. This means that your mother also had all of the eggs that she would have in her life when she was in your grandmother's womb space. This is a really cool idea, and it shows us how generational pain, but also generational healing can occur. We are wise beyond our years when we are just a fetus because we have this power and this energy already growing inside of us. Kapha translates from Sanskrit to that which holds things. The womb space is a kapha organ. It literally holds life. And even if we don't have children in our lifetime, it still holds every single month. You are building, you are holding, and then you are releasing. Releasing is really key in our lunar and monthly cycles. Because that organ can hold, sometimes it holds things that don't belong to us. Just like the seasons of nature and the seasons of our life have doshic correlations, so do the cycles of our monthly cycle. So not only are we connected to the lunar cycle, we are also connected to the 3 doshas every single month. And this is just a very brief overview of these topics. In the spring, that is when life is possible. So the pre-ovulation and ovulation phase of our cycle is connected to the kapha dosha. Whether we use that egg that we're releasing for fertilization and a child, or whether the body just releases it and lets it go, that is still where life is possible. Next, just like in nature, we transition into the pitta or summer season of our cycle. This is where we are building. Regardless of if we are building a fertilized egg and a home for that fetus, or if we're just building the lining of our uterus that we will then shed, there is a busyness inside of our womb space in this time. As we know, in the summertime, we can get those heated pitta type emotions. And if you have ever struggled or had those irritabilities and that short temper leading up to your bleed cycle, this is pitta in your physical manifestations. Then we transition into the winter or vata time of our cycle. This is where we are bleeding. Much like in the fall and winter, early winter of nature, the leaves start to leave the trees. They fall to the ground and they are released. This is where we need to learn to let go. The bleed cycle is a very important part of the menstrual cycle. Because the organ of the womb is a kapha space, quite often we can hold and hold and hold, and it can be very challenging to let it go. Bleeding and free bleeding and experiencing our bleed cycle with love and understanding is a really empowering way to help heal some of the menstrual concerns that you may or may not be having. It's also a great way to start healing generational wounds. When we talk about pregnancy and postpartum cycles, the magic continues to grow. This is an unbelievable thing that the human body is capable of. If you want more details and support with Ayurveda and pregnancy, I would highly suggest checking out my mini course that is devoted to just these topics. This is a huge part of a woman's life and a huge part of a woman's energetic life. So it needs more time than what I can give it in this short video. The cycles of pregnancy and postpartum are a little bit different than the cycles of our normal monthly routines. The first trimester of pregnancy is related to the Vata dosha. And this might seem a little bit backwards because the baby is growing so much. You might think that this is a Kapha phase, but we want to focus on the baby, of course. But when we're talking about a woman's health, a mother's health, we want to focus on the mother. And quite often in that first trimester, the woman is in a state of depletion. There is a lot of nausea and vomiting that occurs in that first trimester. So there is an overall element of depletion for mom. Mom is sharing her blood and her tissues and literally her organs with this new growth. So the baby's phase is like a Kapha phase, but mom's phase is more like Vata or the winter. Once baby has started to grow more into the second trimester, this is referred to as the Pitta phase of pregnancy. That baby is building and growing and busy in there. This is where you start to feel the kicks and the movements. There is an intensity in that baby. It is growing so rapidly and developing so much. This is quite often also where moms start to feel a bit better, maybe less nausea and vomiting, and they get busy as well. So baby and mom are very busy in this phase. The third trimester of pregnancy is actually considered the Kapha phase. So this is where mom is, at her fullest, so to speak. She has a lot of extra volume. There is a lot of extra blood and fluid, and this relates to the Kapha dosha. Now, the postpartum cycle is an incredibly unique time of life. It is quite often, same with pregnancy, not given the due respect that it deserves. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, the postpartum period is incredibly vital, not only for baby, of course, but the focus here should also be very firmly on mom. The initial delivery and postpartum period, the first 0 to 4-ish months, is considered the Vata season of nature again. The first trimester and that first months after delivery are depletion for mom. You have this wonderful baby, of course, but your body just gave away so much fluid and tissues. So again, it's kind of like the fall season of nature. Things are letting go, and things can be quite dry and ungrounded in the mom's body after holding this space for so long. The next phase, yes, baby is busy, mom is busy as well. We are back into the summer season of postpartum. This is around the 3 to 4 to 8 month period. This can also be where mom is either going back to work, maybe they went right back to work, or they're thinking about going back to work. This is also where baby is having all of the activities, all of the experiences, all of the classes. There is a busyness here, and that is Pitta. The last few months of that first year postpartum is considered the Kapha season of postpartum. Focusing on the mom's body in this 8 to 12 month period and beyond might be when the menstrual cycle restarts. Mom's body is starting to come back into her own. You have been giving and giving and giving to your child for all of these months and years at this point, and the focus starts to come back to the womb space for mom. What can be really challenging in the postpartum period and the pregnancy cycle is if we don't give due time to each of these cycles. It is very vital to allow time and space and regrowth. When we talk about cyclical living, whether we are talking about a 24-hour cycle, a 28-day cycle, a yearly cycle, a pregnancy cycle, or a postpartum cycle, it is really important to flow with the seasons, to flow with the cycles, and allow time and space. We cannot rush these cycles and expect that there won't be consequences. Ignoring the changing seasons or being so busy that we're not even paying attention to the cycles of our life is going to lead to manifestations of dis-ease. If we spend our entire menstruating life on hormonal birth control and ignoring our cycles, we cannot expect that our transition into menopause is going to be seamless. We are meant to adapt our lifestyle, our food intake, our use of energy and sleep habits as the seasons of life and nature shift. The good news is that it's never too late to start creating more balance. Ayurveda focuses on preventing dis-ease and illness, but if disease or illness has already set in, there are so many ways that living an Ayurvedic lifestyle can support more harmony. The awesome news is that all of these cycles repeat themselves, so it is always possible to get back on track. In Ayurveda, it's really important to understand that like increases like, and opposites create balance. So if you ever get confused about what you should be doing, come back to simplicity. Focus on the elemental or doshic qualities of whatever concern you're having, and instead of doing more of that thing, try to bring the opposite in, and that will create balance. Lastly, today, I wanted to talk about some Ayurvedic ideas for common concerns that we see in these cycles. So here's another question for you. What would happen if you were driving your car and one of your tires went flat? What would happen if one of those tires completely seized up and stopped moving or just flew off your car altogether? We all know the answer when it comes to that. You would need to pull over and address the tire that is causing the issue. These are cycles in our vehicle. We need to change the oil. We need to put gas in it. We need to keep our tires inflated. But for some reason, when it comes to the cycles of our life, we just keep driving on a flat tire. If your tire is flat in the spring, your tire's going to still be flat in the summer and the winter. If we have low energy and issues in the spring, those same issues are going to keep happening if we don't address them. We need to stop, live mindfully, embody our experiences so we have time to notice these concerns, and then do simple things to address the root cause. You can get your tire patched, you can put more air in the tire of your car, but eventually that tire is going to need to be replaced. We cannot band-aid over these problems and expect that they are going to go away. One of the key components of an Ayurvedic lifestyle is simply to tap into these rhythms. Start to notice in a short cycle, what did you do today in this 24-hour solar cycle that was supportive for your health? What did you do in this 24-hour cycle that was maybe a little unbalanced for your health? What can you do in the next lunar monthly cycle? And what can you do in this season of nature, which is spring while I record this? What can you do in spring that's going to bring more balance for the summer season and then the winter season? What can you do in this season of life to have more ease in the next season of life? These don't have to be big, giant changes. Small, consistent things are going to make an impact, and they are things that you have complete control over. One of the reasons why I love Ayurveda so much is that a lot of the things that we can implement on a daily basis are either incredibly cheap or free. Simply doing your daily activities with mindfulness can bring a lot of balance to your mental health. When your mental health is more balanced, your physical health is going to be more balanced as well. So there are so many things we can do tapping into that solar energy and that solar cycle to bring more ease. One small change today is going to affect that change in a month. Small rituals that we do throughout our day is considered a dinacharya practice in Ayurveda. When we ritualize our activities, instead of making them stagnant routines that we sometimes dread, when we bring some awareness and intention to them, we are giving our body and our mind love and freedom. All health concerns have a doshic correlation, so understanding the elements and the doshas can be really supportive to take control of some of the symptoms or concerns that you're having. Of course, it can be challenging to know where to start and how to see the doshas and elements manifesting in your mind and body, and this is where having an Ayurveda health counselor can come in really handy. What happens in one season of your life is going to affect the balance of the next season. If we are carrying baggage, the load gets awfully heavy over a lifetime. In Ayurveda, like I've mentioned, like increases like, and opposites create balance. So if we have had imbalances in our childhood, if that kapha phase of our life, which is supposed to be joyful and loving and excited, was stressful and filled with anxiety, that is going to cause concerns as you transition through your menarche. If the summer season or the pitta season of your life has been very chaotic and busy, or if you felt kind of stagnant and stuck in a rut in those kind of working years, you are going to have concerns as you transition into the Vata season. We really want to clear up stagnant energy before the end of our life, not only so that we can enjoy our time here on earth, but also so that we can leave the most positive energetic imprint that we can in the universe. Because all living things are made up of the 5 elements and the 3 doshas, we can see doshic-related health and wellness concerns happening regardless of where we are in the seasons of nature or in the seasons of our life. As I have mentioned, kapha translates to that which holds things. So when we talk about health and wellness concerns that are related to the kapha dosha, we want to look specifically at the more negative sides of kapha, or kapha's shadow. Kapha, when it's out of balance, can become very stagnant. Kapha is the earth and water elements, so those are heavy, dense, and sticky elements. In a 24-hour solar cycle in our day, we can see kapha manifesting as that fatigue, lethargy, and low energy. In our yearly cycles, we quite often see kapha concerns in the spring. Like increases like. So in the kapha season of nature, we're going to see more kapha concerns. This is those spring allergies, those mucus, and those phlegm concerns. We might also see some weight gain and water retention. In our life cycles, we can see this as unresolved childhood stuff. Like I mentioned, if you had a stressful or ungrounded childhood, those concerns are going to continue throughout your life. We can also see this in those heavy feelings of heartache, grief, and sadness. We can see these feelings on an individual basis and also a collective basis. There is a lot of collective heartache and grief happening in the world right now because we have reached a point where we can no longer ignore that baggage that we're carrying. In our 28-day lunar or womb cycle, we can again see this as those heavy concerns, fatigue at parts of our cycle, maybe brain fog, or those depressed or heavier type feelings. We can also see weight gain and water retention in that kapha phase of our cycle. We might also have yeast infection concerns because that's a heavy fluid type concern that is related to the kapha dosha. We might also have concerns on a monthly and also yearly basis of endometriosis. That is an excess amount of tissue that is forming. It is in an area where the body can hold tissue. So this is again related to kapha. We might also see this in the development of cysts and various lumps. So breast lumps that are benign and non-cancerous, or cysts on the ovary or in the uterus. They are holding fluid. They are holding tissue. They are holding space. In our pregnancy cycles, we see this in the 3rd trimester. As I mentioned, there is a volume associated with the 3rd trimester. There is a heavy feeling quite often. So if you're in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy during the kapha season of nature, and if you have high kapha in your prakriti or your original constitution in the first place, like plus like plus like is going to create a lot of like. In the postpartum phase, this is the 8 to 12 month post-delivery time frame. A lot of people, Western medical system included, doesn't even really consider this to be postpartum anymore. But we know from an Ayurvedic perspective that it takes cycles to get back into the swing of things, to get back in the flow of your body. And at that 8 to 12 month range is when mom is starting to kind of gain back all of her strength, all of the tissues and fluids that she's lost throughout delivery and breastfeeding is starting to get regained. She's kind of getting back in her own rhythm. My very good friend Brianna from Homecoming has a wonderful mini course called Back in the Flow. And this is to support women in that phase of their life to regain those cycles and to have support when their menstrual cycle reoccurs after delivering their child. If you are interested in that, I will link to Brianna and to that mini course in the description below. We can implement some very simple things into our life to help balance the shadow side of kapha. If kapha is that which holds things, it's very important to learn to let go of what is no longer serving you, particularly if these are not your wounds or battles to fight. Herbs and spices are great ways to bring more balance into our daily life. In Ayurveda, we believe that our spice cabinet is our medicine cabinet. So if you are feeling sluggish or have low energy, adding some heating and warming spices to your daily routine can benefit your digestion and your overall mood. So things like cinnamon, cardamom, star anise, vanilla, nutmeg, orange peel, and even some of those Italian herbs like rosemary, oregano, things like that, that bring a little bit of heat. Black pepper is another great one. And of course, those even spicier things like cayenne and chili peppers can be a really great way to invigorate our body from the inside out. Movement is also very important to balance the kapha dosha. Cardio type exercises or walking, something that is moving our energy and moving our blood. Kapha can feel a bit like an anchor sometimes, and in order to move that anchor, we need to move our physical bodies. Sometimes it can feel like there are roots tying us to the earth. We just can't get moving. But the amazing thing about momentum is that once we start moving, we gain momentum. With our meals, we want to avoid things that are heavy and sticky. So carbs like breads and pasta, anything that has a lot of grease or oil in it should be avoided if you're having kapha concerns. We can still eat a balanced meal and a balanced intake, but we might want to slightly decrease the amount of food we're eating at each meal. The good news is that coffee can also help the kapha dosha. I'm not referring to the type of coffee that has all the syrupy sweetness in it and cold foam on the top. I'm talking about good organic black coffee. It is bitter and it's also a stimulant. So we don't want to rely on coffee, but it can help to move the water in our body. Coffee and caffeinated teas are diuretics, which means that they move the water out of our body. They make us pee. So if water retention and low energy is a concern for you, a Dusty Rose lifestyle approach might be to have a cup of black coffee. Pitta translates to that which digests things. Pitta is our ability to digest not only food, but emotions and experiences that we experience in life. Pitta's shadow side is that intensity, the passion, the heat, the irritation, and the rushed behaviors. In our 24-hour cycle, we can see this during our midday. When the sun is the highest in the sky, Pitta is the highest in our 24-hour cycle, which is already a solar cycle to begin with. If you've ever met someone who gets hangry when they miss a meal, this is Pitta energy. We need to flow with the cycles of the solar day, especially when the sun is the highest. We can also see this in that toxic hustle culture. In our Pitta years of life, during the Pitta phase of our cycle, during the Pitta moments of our day when we're usually the busiest, this is a lot of Pitta. Pitta plus Pitta plus Pitta equals a whole lot of Pitta. And fire, just like in nature, in our bodies as well, can get out of control very, very quickly. And fire consumes. fire will burn you down and everyone around you if you are in that spicy pitta mood. In our yearly cycles, we see the most pitta in the summer season. Depending on where you live, you might have much more pitta all year long. Where I am in the Rocky Mountains, it is a short period of intense pitta. But when we have that pitta season, it's usually accompanied by wildfires, which is also very pitta. So it's very important to keep our fire under control. We want it to be strong so that we can digest and metabolize things like food and emotions, but it can get out of control very quickly. In our life cycles, this cycle of our life, this period of our life is those busy years. Regardless of what we are doing with our life, we are busy during this phase. We cannot expect to burn the candle at both ends and expect to have any candle left. We need to slow down before the next season of life occurs to have balance in our later years. The FOMO, the fear of missing out, the grind or die type mentality, particularly if we're trying to prove ourselves in the workplace or provide for our family or our loved ones, we have this grind or die culture, this boss babe mentality. We would actually have more balanced energy if we rested more. We would put our energy into the things that truly matter. Not having any rocking chair regrets is something that I am very passionate about in my own life. I want to experience life, but when I've worked with clients in the later years of their life, and when I worked with palliative care patients, a lot of people said, "Why did I rush through my life? Why did I focus on my career so much and not spend my time doing the things that made me happy?" You give your life to a career, and that career doesn't always return the amount of energy that you've put in. So trying to slow down in that pitta phase of your life will create so much more balance for you and the people around you. The womb cycle of the pitta phase is that intensity, that irritability, the my way or the highway type feelings. You might get really intense with your loved ones, especially if you've had high pitta in your career world. It might be really easy to take your frustrations out on your partner or your children or the people in your home, particularly if you don't feel fulfilled or valued in your workplace. These are the people that it's easiest to bring up emotions with, and sometimes they can become a dumping ground. We might also feel heated blood or heated mucus. So I work with lots of women who have UTI type concerns, but a lot of times it's not a UTI. That burning and intensity feeling when you urinate is sometimes just because your body is so hot that the urine passing through that small tube of your urethra feels intense and tingly, and there's a pain associated with that. So the first thing I do when I work with clients who have those types of concerns throughout their life is figuring out how much pitta they naturally have in their constitution. Usually it's quite high, and usually it's quite out of balance. So those hot feelings that we might feel in our womb blood or in our ovulation or urine or even our bowel movements usually is related to unbalanced pitta. Like I said, pitta gets out of control very, very quickly, and we can notice these imbalances as manifestations in our body. Slowing down enough to pay attention to these fiery signals will allow the water element of pitta to come online. Pitta is fire and water. I always say that pitta is self-limiting in some ways if it can slow down enough to remember that it's 50% water. In a pregnancy cycle, the pitta phase is the second trimester. Like I've mentioned, it's when mom usually gets quite busy with all of the things she needs to get accomplished. And it's also when baby is growing and, the baby is creating its Ayurvedic constitution as well. So if your baby or the fetus has a lot of pitta in its prakriti or constitution, you might feel a lot of heat and intensity in this phase. In the postpartum cycle, the 3 to 8 month period is considered the pitta phase. The baby is busy, the mama is busy. As I mentioned, you may or may not be considering going back to work. Maybe you already have, but that reality of thinking about what's next starts to creep into your day-to-day experience. You probably, if you've been off work, have some financial stressors as well. This is an expensive phase of life. So intensity around finances can also be very stressful. So all of this thinking, all of these activities, you might be back commuting more to go to activities and different things. This is all the speed and intensity of Pitta. So as I mentioned with Pitta, you can't expect to burn a candle at both ends and expect to have any candle left. We need to put that fire out. We need to lower the temperature, quite literally, of our body. The organs of the body that are Pitta dominant are organs like the liver and gallbladder. They create a lot of intense secretions in our body. The liver holds a lot of anger emotions. So if you have concerns with Pitta, supporting your liver is a very, very important first step. You can do this through food and fluid intake. So you might have heard the expression cool as a cucumber. There's a lot of water in cucumbers. Things like functional fluids, you need to have a lot of water in your body if you're having fire in your body to put it out. So things like cucumbers, raw vegetables are great if you have high Pitta or Pitta concerns. Cilantro, dill, and parsley is really, really supportive. Drinking those functional fluids with lemon and even putting parsley in your water. Parsley tea is a great way to support the liver and cool down the body. Using anything green. Green is the opposite of fire. So grounding to the earth, taking the time, Pitta, to ground, not just go for a really fast walk, like put your feet on the grass and settle in. Swimming is also a great activity for Pitta. It literally cools you down. It's fluid. It's the water element. It's calming. Slowing down in general is very important, and allowing your brain to rest. Pitta moves fast. Quite often people say, well, meditation doesn't work for me. And so my follow-up question to that is, tell me about your meditation practice. You have to be doing the practices in order for them to work. If you tried meditation one time for 2 minutes and you say it doesn't work, you probably have a lot of Pitta in your prakriti or constitution. Sit and allow the body to rest. You also want to be avoiding anything food-wise that is spicy or hot. That is going to increase your internal temperature. Tomatoes and other acidic foods should also be avoided. And again, here we want to avoid grease and fast foods in particular. Eating on the run, grabbing a drive-through food and eating while you're moving is speed and intensity. We want to try to avoid that. So you can do things easily to decrease the amount of Pitta you have. So even if you're going to go through a drive-through, which I do from time to time when I'm traveling, try to take that drive-through meal and go sit in a park and put your feet on the ground. Even if that's for 5 minutes, that's going to decrease the amount of Pitta. That is not an Ayurvedic approach, but again, that is the Dusty Rose way. We don't have to be perfect to create more balance. Last but not least is the beautiful Vata dosha. Vata translates to that which moves things. It is the air and ether elements, and there is no gravity or moisture associated with air and ether. Therefore, Vata's shadow can be ungrounded energy, anxieties and nerves, feeling frazzled, and anything that is dry, rough, or airy. So that ungrounded feeling. In our 24-hour cycle, this is when we might feel really scattered. So it might be more at the end of the day or trying to get out the door where we're just like running around in circles and not really doing anything, but moving really quickly. We can't turn off when Vata is high. So quite often people have difficulty sleeping at the end of that 24-hour cycle. Getting in touch with the solar cycle can be really beneficial for all of the doshas, but particularly Vata, because we live in this modern world where we can turn on a light, we have Wi-Fi on our phone right next to our bed, we can scroll for hours and hours and hours. This is all Vata. We need to turn Vata off in order to rest. In our yearly cycles, we see Vata occurring a lot in winter, particularly if you are in a colder climate. If you are in the mountains like I am as well, being at elevation, I'm already up in the ethers, so it can be very dry and ungrounded in the winter season. We see this in any dry and rough conditions like our skin, our mucous membranes, those really like sore, painful throats that feel like razor blades. There's no moisture there, it just hurts. We can also see this with our bowel movements if there is a dryness or a roughness or a small amount, or skipping days with our bowel movements. If we don't have a bowel movement every day, there's an irregularity and a variability that is associated with the Vata dosha. In our life cycles, Vata shows up as a busybody. I always say Vata is like a hummingbird. It zips from here to there and it's always going. It's a little different than the Pitta dosha, whereas Pitta is intense and always moving. Vata is jumping and skipping from thing to thing. So Pitta is quite good at getting a lot of things done. Vata does a lot of things, but it doesn't always finish those things. It's ungrounded and scattered energy. So we can see this as that fear of missing out also, but there's like an anxiety attached to it, or a feeling of like, well, I guess I have to do that, so I'm going to do that. We don't always want to be doing these things because Vata wants to be grounded and balanced, but it gets pulled. It's like a bag in the wind. It blows from thing to thing. So we can most definitely see this in our womb cycles when it comes to feelings like anxiety and restlessness. We can also sometimes feel like a palpitation or a speed in our heart or difficulty with our lungs. Air and ether make up the Vata dosha. So areas like our lungs and our throat chakra and our heart can be very affected by the Vata dosha when it's out of balance. There's a speed and an irregularity with Vata. We might also have dry monthly cycles. So whether it is our ovulation or our bleed itself, there can be a dryness there. There is no moisture in Vata. So if we have high Vata all the time, we're going to see that coming up in our ovulation and bleed cycles. As I mentioned, we can see also a constipation, so we might see this around our monthly cycles as well, and it can happen at different times, particularly if you have imbalanced Vata, which most of us do because of the world we live in. We can also see this affecting our sleep. So understanding your lunar cycle will give you a lot of information about what you can do. The full moon can quite often increase feelings of restlessness. I always say that it's like there's gravity in outer space. The moon is so big that it's like pulling us away from gravity. The opposite can be true for new moon. Because there's kind of nothing up there, we might feel more kind of grounded, but also heavy in a way. So understanding when you're ovulating and when you're bleeding and what moon cycle that may or may not relate to is a really, really powerful thing you can do for your menstrual health. In the pregnancy cycle from conception through the first trimester is considered Vata. It is the speed. If you've ever watched those time-lapse videos of a sperm and an egg meeting and how fast they replicate and like create life, there's a speed there for sure. The baby is forming and it's developing a lot of structures. So that's movement as well. In your postpartum cycle, from the birth to about 3 months is considered the Vata season of the postpartum. Again, we're focusing on mom here. Mom has just lost a lot of blood and tissue, and there's an overall state of depletion. If you are breastfeeding, that is a huge amount of fluid that is leaving your body. So constantly replenishing that is really, really important. And Ayurvedic philosophy says that the first 42 days after birth gives you the health of your next 42 years. It is so important to replenish ourselves after they've been depleted. This is also a time in the postpartum period, particularly if you're a new mom, but I'm sure all moms still feel this, is worrying. Am I doing a good enough job? What does that cry mean? Have I done enough? Should I let them cry? Should I pick them up? What should I feed them? When should I do this? When should I do that? There's a lot of movement in the mom's brain. And you pair that with not sleeping very well, and there's a whole lot of Vata dysregulation and imbalance that is possible. So regardless of where you are in your yearly, monthly, or 24-hour cycle, there are things that we can do on a daily basis to balance Vata. We don't want to have that hummingbird brain zipping from one thing to another and never really finishing what we're doing, because that creates more imbalance and it kind of makes us feel crappy that we're not getting what we want done. Having a to-do list and a calendar is very important if you have high Vata or if you're having Vata manifestations. And this is important not just for you, but everyone around you in your home as well. Have shared goals with your partner. I want us to wash the windows this weekend. I want us to spring clean. I want us to get this job done. And these are the things I'm going to work on in my spare time. And these are the things that you can work on in your spare time. Working together for a common goal makes us feel very good and grounded. Vata can have a lot of movement, these tangles in our mind around and around and around. We need to take that tangle of thoughts and bring them out. So writing things down, journaling, walking when we're feeling anxious, not sitting and letting that emotion get more and more tangled. We want to straighten it out and send our energy in a logical path. Meditation and grounding practices is so vital for Vata. There is no gravity with Vata, so we have to keep Vata grounded. Connection to the earth, staying warm and hydrated is so vital. Exercises like strength training and weight training is great for Vata because there is quite literally weight that is holding us to the earth. And for Vata, we can use a lot of spices and herbs as well. Heating herbs, much like with Kapha, can be very helpful. We just want to be careful with the quantities that we are using. Anything that creates heat can also create dryness. So we want to keep Vata warm, but we don't want to dry Vata out. So things like soups and stews, porridge, stewed apples are a really great thing. Anything with fluid and moisture in it. We want to avoid dry, rough foods. So things like dry crackers, raw fruit and vegetables and salads are to be avoided if you have high Vata. You want to replace those with cooked vegetables and warm, moist foods. I hope you have enjoyed this brief talk about cyclical living as cyclical beings, the Ayurvedic seasons of womanhood, the solar cycles, the lunar cycles, yearly and lifelong energy is such an interesting topic. This is just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to learn more, or if you want some support on how to balance the doshas in different phases of your life, I would love to chat more with you. Return to simplicity. If you feel overwhelmed after this call or like you're not really sure where to start with a small cycle. What can you do in tomorrow's solar cycle to bring a bit more balance? What can you do in the next monthly lunar cycle, regardless of where you are in your menstruation journey? What can you do to bring more harmony to your lunar rhythm? What can you do in this season of nature that will bring more ease in the next season? What can you do in this life cycle to bring a bit more ease for your next life cycle and the cycles of life that come after you, whether you have children or not? I would love to know how you feel about these topics. I am always open to chat. If something really stood out to you, I would love to know what it is. Please write it in the comment section below. I would love to share a few of the offerings that I have available right now that might interest you. Spring Cleaning, an Ayurvedic Reset, is a group program starting on April 14th. In this group offering, there will be a quick video to watch at the beginning of the week with a few prompts on how to bring more balance throughout the rest of the week. If this interests you, please let me know and I will send you all of the details. I also have a couple of pre-recorded mini courses that might interest you. The Ayurvedic Seasons of Womanhood and Ayurveda and the Seasons of Pregnancy. These mini courses go much more in depth on how to harness the power of these potent cycles of our life, and they provide more tips to bring balance. I am so thankful that you have shared your time with me here in this virtual space. If you don't already subscribe to my YouTube channel, consider hitting the subscribe button, turn on alerts so that you don't miss a single video, and feel free to share this video and any other videos with anyone you think might benefit. Every little thing truly does help my channel grow. If you would like to work one-on-one or learn more about my Ayurveda offerings, feel free to head to my website, dustyroselifestyle.com, and be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook as well. Take care and chat soon. Bye.